Good morning. It is Saturday morning here in what is it, the great planet Earth. Um, if you have been following along, boys and girls, and I'm sure you have, we have quite the uh, fiesta going on in Eastern Europe. And things are not necessarily any less colorful here in the U.S. So it would seem on initial inspection that the world is falling apart at the seams, which is not actually the case. So today, while I'm sitting here talking to myself on a live stream, I thought I would go over some fun stuff so we could all get kind of a mental break from all of this because Lord knows we could all use a mental break. Hang on, I'll turn some music on. So I thought I would discuss planetary hours and how to use them. So in astrology, there is. One second. There we go. In astrology, we study and try to interpret the symbolism of planets and signs and their relationships to each other. So, from the outside looking in, and for people who are new to it or of more scientific bent, this looks literally like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, right? Just a lot of hoodoo voodoo speculation. And this is where astrology becomes a marriage of science, right, and art. So the science part is that we really do need like calculations of the physical planets and what their positions are, right, and all the little technical things that go with it to make an astrology chart. There's some actual science and math involved in this because we're not just randomly pulling things out of our hat and making it up as we go along. Although I'm sure there's some people who would do that. And the art, of course, is that once you have all of this data, we have to make sense of it. It's not enough. It's just not enough to say, you know, and you'll hear this a lot sometimes, right? These giant data dumps. Well, your Mercury is a sesquiquadrate your Pluto, which is perihelion, the 47th degree of the 26th progressed second. Oh my God, right? So it's not enough to be able to just like data dump all this information. We have to be able to make sense of it. And making sense of it is where the art comes in. Because at that point, we are trying to uh, interpret or make a cohesive, understandable statement out of the symbolism that's involved. Now, a lot of astrology is based on mythology, right? And so when we look at these things, for instance, the planet Uranus, which is mythologically known as one of the founder of the universe, right? He's I think the Greek equivalent of Zeus. So he is the great god of the universe. When we look at that, we're trying to understand the nature of the planet Uranus. We look at the mythology of Uranus, right? And one of the things that we know is that not only is Uranus or Zeus, depending on which name you're using, right? Not only are they a force to be reckoned with, this is somebody who literally is above the law because they make the laws. They're also not someone who is limited to rules and regulations. They struggle with that, right? And we also know that Uranus is known for having a very short temper and also creating things. And one of the things that we know that we can kind of glean from that when we interpret Uranus in a natal chart is that wherever Uranus shows up in a natal chart, this is where you're going to find one, a real struggle with um, playing by the rules. And here's the catch, though: it's not that they're antisocial or have some type of uh, defiant, oppositional defiant disorder. It's nothing out of the DSM. What it is that typically with Uranus people, what you're going to find, because Uranus and Saturn are the two sides of Aquarius. Saturn is the old ruler, Uranus is the modern. With Uranus people or strong Uranus in chart, we're going to find these are people that have difficulty following the rules if you can't explain the good reason for that rule. So it's not enough to tell them, well, you can't do that. Well, this is how you have to do it. You have to be able to tell them why you can't do it that way, right? And not because that's what they said. So that's very much in keeping with somebody who is, Lord God, Emperor, of the universe, right? What do you mean I can't do it? Like, you better have a good reason for stopping me from doing what I want to do. And if it makes sense, if you can give them that rationale or that reasoning, the Uranus person will happily comply and go along with the rules and probably improvise and make things better as they go along, because they will find the reasons why this is not the best approach, right? Because Uranus is the great stress test. So, and it's like that with all of the planets. So we try to take some understanding of the mythology that the planet is associated with to try and make sense of it in a chart. Now, this isn't always foolproof, and there are some times when things will pop up that we're not necessarily seeing in a mythological interpretation, right? And that, my friends, is where being wrong in your astrology actually becomes very valuable, because what happens is when we see things in chart, or we don't catch things, right? Or we see some anomaly in a chart, and we see it repeating over and over and over again. And this is where scientific method comes in, right? Then we start taking notice and start keeping track of it, because that is giving us information that is beyond our limited base of knowledge. So, for instance, Jupiter actually shows up prominently, not always, but pretty significantly often in charts of death. So we don't think of Jupiter as a death planet. We think of, Pluto as a death planet. But Jupiter often frequently shows up in, charts for people's passing, right? Which seems counterintuitive. But think about this. When we think about Jupiter, one of the things that we think about with Jupiter as a planet is that Jupiter is a planet of liberation. It's the planet of moksha, or spiritual release, right? And it's also the planet of rewards and blessings. And sometimes for some people, when they die, this is the one moment in their life when they get all of the rewards and accolades and applause and overflowing of generous words and compliments and testimony to their goodness. Unfortunately, sometimes it only happens when they die, right? So it would make sense that Jupiter would be prominent at the time of death for that person. Now, if the person died in different circumstances, or didn't have these kinds of big uplifting kind of reviews from the people around them, they may not have Jupiter prominent at their time of death. But this is what I'm saying, and this is where art and science gets a little complicated with astrology, right? So the science tells us that these planets are showing up, and the mythology we're basing on the interpretation kind of looks like this. But when we get things wrong, it can be very destabilizing. It's like, oh my God, oh. But what it does, it gives us an opportunity to start doing scientific method and breaking it down and seeing, like, is this a pattern? Is there something else here outside of my wheelhouse of knowledge that I should be making note of, because I haven't been told this yet, right? So that's pretty good stuff. I'm so happy to see you. There's somebody in the room. Can you please tell me who you are? Come into the chat. Here they can see that. Okay, so while we're going through it now, and we're really going through the soup now everywhere, globally, everywhere. Geez Louise, nobody's immune. Nobody's immune, even the United States. We're seeing some real hinky-dinky stuff, right? Hi. So one of the things you're going to see a lot of the astrologers talking about now, because it's like the big buzzword, right? It's like, ooh, Pluto and Capricorn, right? Now, the thing about it is, Pluto coming into the last degrees and about to change sign in Capricorn is a very big deal, because Pluto takes about, I believe, 108 years to move from one sign to another. It's an extremely slow moving planet. So when that planet reaches the final degrees and is about to change signs, it's a very noticeable thing. So some astrologers have been talking about it for a long time in terms of how this is going to affect different countries, and especially the United States, for those people who study mundane astrology, and have been looking at the charts of the United States. Now, of course, the problem is, just between you and me, and I hate this, right? Do you see all this gray in my hair? I don't need more things to not look forward to that old age. And yet, what you'll see a lot, especially with the older middle-aged astrologers, specifically the baby boomers, I don't know what the hell that's about, but they're all gloom and doom people, right? So they see Pluto and Capricorn reaching these final degrees and about to make a change. They're like, oh my God, the end of the United States. Oh, the government's going to collapse. Wow. I mean, just like, I can't. Some of these people have remarkable backgrounds, right, in the real world. They have tremendous credentials, remarkable backgrounds, and they're fairly good at their astrology. Some are better than others. But I'll tell you, as an astrologer, you have the voice of authority. So when you get on your gloom and doom train, right? Um, and it's the baby boomers are all about this nihilistic future. They're worse than the teenagers. It makes it very, very hard for the people because we're assuming that you know more than I do. So if you're not seeing anything good to look forward to, my God, it must be really bad, right? So, so when you're seeing, or if you've been watching it before, because you definitely saw it before, but one of the things you'll see is a lot of this nihilistic, dystopian world is coming to an end, everything's going to collapse, civilization is going to fall, kind of things associated with Pluto in Capricorn, and that's not necessarily the truth. Pluto in Capricorn is going to give us what is it? Not the collapse of civilization, but it will certainly give us the end of the old social orders and power structures as we knew them. So nature and evolution are always moving forward. With us or without us, they're always making progress. The dinosaurs went extinct because they couldn't adapt. We went on without them, right? Nature and evolution went on without the dinosaurs, and nature and evolution will go on without us and our society as we currently know it, but always moving towards something better. So with that said, Pluto and Capricorn coming to a close and moving into another sign is literally going to destroy the old power structures and the old social structures that we are familiar with, that we think holds up reality, and make way for something completely new, which should be exciting because the old power structures were not necessarily benefiting anybody except a small handful of people. And if you look right now, you can see it. You can see it. Like it's all coming apart at the seams and dismantling. The wheels are coming off the car. But we're heading into good things. So it's not like it's happening in a vacuum. And once that falls apart, there's nothing to take its place, or there's something horrible and worse. No, we're moving in good directions. So with Russia and Ukraine, this is another example of what we're dealing with, right? With Pluto in those last degrees of Capricorn and an old social order changing. So in Russia, in Russian culture, and certainly in the Russian government, it is very much a society that is built on male dominant kind of thinking. Um, I'm not kidding. In Russia, it's not even something to be embarrassed about. There's this thing about a man has a right to his left, and the idea is that men in Russia are entitled to have a wife and the mistress. That's his right. A man has a right to his left. So it's very male oriented, male focused, very patriarchal, right? And uh, it's also very power driven. One of the problems with the Russian military right now that they're not really covering very well in the news is that the Russian government is the whole society, like from top down, is incredibly corrupt. The place is run by criminals, like literally, like from one level to the other. It's all criminal, shady, unethical. Like how can I get mine before other people get theirs? Like it's horrible, right? Greed, corruption, and power. Um, and as a result of that, the military has not been well run because apparently you can find in some obscure news references outside of the U.S. some of the money, or a lot of the money, that was intended to go to benefit the military and buy them new equipment and all sorts of stuff. Like it all got funneled into private pockets, to buy super yachts and all sorts of stuff. So the reason the Russian army is dealing with such dilapidated equipment that doesn't work and this and that and the other thing largely has to do with the fact that they weren't receiving the funds they were supposed to buy new equipment, to buy functional things, to repair the stuff that they have, because private entities that were controlling the gatekeeping the money were funneling a lot of that money into their pocket. Now, this is not exclusive to Russia. There are a lot of places that are guilty of this. Mexico does this. Turkey? No. Remember when we had that ship that got stuck in the Panama Canal, right? One of the countries there, or a lot of the ports, same thing. There's a lot of corruption and greed, so people are funneling money into their pockets and totally ignoring infrastructure, repairs and needs and stuff like that. And then you have, stuff happen. Oh my God. So, but this is the old way. And Pluto in Capricorn, because Capricorn rules structure and daddy, right? And patriarchal forms and models. And Pluto represents greed, power, and corruption, among other things. All of these things are coming to an end, and we're about to go into Aquarius. Now, the thing about it is, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, we've got a whole new set of issues to deal with, because obviously, as humans, we haven't really evolved enough. right? But we are moving into totally different uncharted waters. So the old ways are going, and a lot of people are kicking up a lot of dust and a lot of about it. So don't panic when you hear people talk about, oh my God, the government's going to collapse, and it's not. It's not. The old way of doing things is going to collapse, or it's not going to collapse. It is disintegrating, and as the wheels are coming off the car, it is rapidly being replaced by things that are moving us into the future, because nature and evolution are always moving to the future with or without us. It did it without the dinosaurs. It can do it without us. So there's that. So while I have someone in the room, please, by all means, ask a question or talk or something, because otherwise I'm here talking to myself, and I'll just be talking about depressing current events for the next hour, because that is what's keeping me up at night. Oh, right. So planetary hours. God, that was a long walk. So planetary hours. So we in astrology, one of the things that we go with as a guideline is that every day of the week is ruled by a planet. Right. Sunday is ruled by the sun. Monday is ruled by the moon. Tuesday is ruled by Mercury, I believe. Wednesday is ruled by Mars, or I may have those backwards. Um, Thursday is ruled by Jupiter. Friday is ruled by Venus. Saturday is ruled by Saturn. I have to double check. And when you break down those days, every hour in the day, starting from sunrise to sunset, are not exact 60-minute hours. They're time blocks based on time of sunrise and sunset for that day during the year. We have the hours; those planetary windows are ruled by specific planets as well. So one of the things that you can do, here's your little astro tip for the day. One of the things that you can do, there's a really good, there are many good planetary calculators online. Just look up Astrology Planetary Calculator, and you can look up the planetary hour and day. Now, if you are planning something important, or you'd like something to be a little bit more successful, or you'd like to avoid disaster, what you can do is look up the planetary hour and day for the thing that you're looking at doing, and make sure that it jives with what you're intending, right? So if you're looking at having medical treatments, for example, right? Medical treatments or surgeries, you're probably not going to want to have it on a Saturn day, because Saturn slows things down. So that will absolutely slow down your healing process. Not great. Also, Mars is a little questionable. We want to stay away from Mars days, because Mars is about bloodletting and cutting. And while it seems consistent with surgery, what we don't want is an overemphasis on blood and cutting, right? Because Mars is also very fast and quick acting. So we don't want impulsive or rushed kind of actions on surgery days, which also includes cosmetic surgeries, right? Um, so stay away from Saturn and Mars days for those types of events. And definitely watch your hours specifically, right? So try not to do those things under those particular hours. If you're going to have something that you want to improve your looks, whether it's buying new clothes or getting a facial treatment or cosmetic surgery, Venus hours and or Venus days are your best bets. Doing it on a Venus hour on simultaneously a Venus day may not work as well as you would think it to, because you would think it's like a double bonus of Venus. But what it can do is actually make people lazy. Venus is not known for energetic, sweaty effort. So double Venus times are probably not ideal for Venus related things. They're very, very good for relaxing, enjoying yourself, having, a bit of Chardonnay. And so on and so forth with the other planets. So you can always look them up to look what the rulerships are for different planets, and then see how that jives with what you're intending to do at that time. And it's fairly useful. It is not an exact science. It's just a guideline. It's just a guideline. So don't use that as the absolute rule of whether you do something or not. Just use it as a bit of a guideline, that you can kind of move around a little bit. So, for instance, today is a Saturn day, because it is Saturday, and this live stream started under a sun hour. So under a sun hour, things that have to do with entertainment, right, and being visible, and being noticed, all of these things are, covered under a sun hour. Now, with a sun Saturn combination, sun hour Saturn day, this also means that if you're going to do something like this, you had better know your stuff, right? Because the sun also rules authority, and so does Saturn. Saturn rules the expert, sun rules the leader. So with the sun Saturn combination together, this would not have been a great day to get on here, and kind of make stuff up as I go along. She says to herself now, she's already started the thing. But it is a very good day to share information and wisdom and to act in a teaching capacity, and or to work with facts as we know them. Hi. All right, who else do we have in here? So just so you guys know, like, I can see that there are people in the room, but I do not get your names. So if you come in the room, please introduce yourself so I know who to call you. So I know I have Noreen in the room with me, but Noreen, you and I apparently, no, we no longer have company. Okay, so there's that. Now, Noreen, do you have any questions? Questions, thoughts, jokes? So, well, let me ask you some questions then. So, are you very familiar with astrology? Have you watched a lot of astrology channels, read a lot of astrology stuff, talked to or listened to astrologers? Okay. So, what would you say has been at any point one of the more confusing things about astrology, that you've heard or read? Like, pick something that has been confusing for you. Yeah, the entertainment is big, especially on YouTube. Astrology as entertainment is a very big thing here, and it's interesting. I was trying to explain this to my there's literally there's very few ways to say this that doesn't sound like you're like insulting somebody, and it's not an insult. It's literally just a vehicle, right? So with astrology on YouTube on video format, um, being successful on YouTube as an astrologer, people think that you just like because I thought the same thing too, right? If to be successful on YouTube, you just need to get on and know what you're talking about, right? And that's not true at all. To be successful on YouTube as an astrologer has a lot to do with popularity, right? Because it's about entertainment. So we have a lot of people on YouTube that are only looking for entertainment. So people who bring the party are often very popular on YouTube, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying anything. Because I've spent a lot of time listening to some, not all of them, but some folks, and I just wow, it's just if you don't look at the video and you just listen to people, and it's the same thing in real life, right? So if you stop looking at people and you just listen to what they're saying, right, you'll realize there's a whole lot of stuff they're not actually saying, right? Or they're saying a whole lot of stuff just doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, So, I mean, this is for everybody, not just YouTube astrologers. But with YouTube astrologers in particular, popularity has a lot to do with your success, and it doesn't matter how much you know or don't know. There was actually an astrologer on here who used to reference her teacher all the time. Well, my teacher told me, my teacher this, my teacher. You don't even know what you're doing, and you're running a channel. And she's got over 10,000 subscribers. So it clearly has nothing to do with her knowing what she's talking about, and everything to do with she's cute and she's popular, and that's okay. So YouTube is a platform, at least currently, up until now, that is most successfully utilized by people who have the capacity to be very popular, right? And 11th housers typically fall into this group. So people with strong 11th houses also usually do very, very well on YouTube. Right. Okay, great. Well, we'll talk about transits. Okay. Um, So, and it's no thing against them. These are different vehicles, right? So if we were actually to sit down and write something, like write a column, write an article, write a book, I don't think they could do it because there's like you can't do a giant data dump of aspects and transits and planets and have it make sense in writing, right? But on video, you should look polished. Well, here's the rules for YouTube astrologers. Ready? This is so funny. So if you're going to be a YouTube astrologer, if you're a man, you just have to look like a wizard, right? Um, or an or a garden gnome, or some kind of wizened old derelict sitting in a bar who's so life weary, like oh my god, like Charles Bukowski, the poet. And you'll be taken seriously instantly. Like if you if you notice, you'll see a lot of that. Um, when it comes to visual entertainment, we have a very low bar for men compared to women. So women have a much higher visual bar that we have to meet in order to get some forgiveness. With men, literally, you can look like an old wizard, a garden gnome, or a drunken derelict from a bar like Charles Bukowski, and you're in. However, when you're a woman, apparently the secret formula for being very popular on YouTube as a woman is one, you have to look good at all times. So this, what you're saying right now, the no makeup thing doesn't wash. You really have to put your makeup on and do your hair. And what I've seen also too is a lot of the older, more established astrologers who've been here longer all seem to have these beautiful settings that they're sitting in, like houses with beautiful furniture and all sorts of stuff, like big money. So clearly, looking like someone is supporting you helps a lot too. Because I don't know any astrologer that can afford the digs some of these people are living in. So you have to be polished and attractive. You have to dress well. It's better if you have a nice, beautiful, expensive setting behind you, because then it looks like you know what you're doing, even though your husband probably paid for all that. Um, and then you get to be one of two things. You either get to be like the older, more mature, like soft and, reassuring granny kind of appearance, or you got to be the young, cute little, like Cupid doll. And those seem to be two formulas that work the most. Everybody who doesn't fall in those particular profiles struggles, struggles. Clearly, I'm not any of those things. Um, anyway, so if you're thinking about being a YouTube astrologer, there you go. You need to be young and pretty and very polished, or if you're a woman, you have to be the reassuring maternal grandmotherly figure and be very polished, and you should have a very posh background. And if you're a man, well, it doesn't really matter what you look like. Like literally, it doesn't matter what you look like, because you'll get right there's 50% of your credibility off the bat. You could literally talk gas at your behind. People wouldn't care. You'll get bonus points if you look like a wizard or a garden gnome. Okay, sorry. All right. Yeah. Okay, so these are great questions. These are great questions. So let's talk about that. All right. So with transits, all right, when you're listening to people give you like, and it's confusing to me too, right? I literally have to like, oh, what the hell are they saying? Like, and stop and pull up a chart and actually visually look at it because I can't listen to it. So when you're hearing people talk about, oh, well, Pluto is conjuncting Mercury while Venus is sesquisquare Saturn and the moon is parallel, black moon Lilith, as they both hit the midpoint of it. It's not just you being confused. That's a lot of data dump, right? It doesn't mean anything, right? It's just data. So a transit essentially is the planet overhead right now, okay, as it's making relationships to other planets and or your chart, someone else's chart, a country's chart, whatever it is we're looking at. So when we look at the transits, we're looking at what planet and its energy or its uh, focus or drive is activating something else. And the thing with astrology that gets confusing, this is where it becomes hard to learn, is once you learn all your basics, right? Mars usually means this, the moon is that, Venus is this, then we're talking about combinations of things. So you might have Venus conjunct Mars, and that means one thing, but that Venus conjunct Mars might be simultaneously squaring the moon, which totally changes its presentation. That's where it gets complicated. So when we're looking at transits, we're looking at what's happening right now overhead as those planets relate to each other, and then we're looking at how that connects to or activates things in our own chart. I use whole houses sometimes. I guess house systems in astrology charts are a lot like shoes. There's always a better pair of shoes for the occasion. And you can certainly wear any of them with the outfit you have on, but some will certainly look better and be more appropriate than others. And with whole house systems, I generally tend to use them when I'm doing monthly horoscopes for like everybody, because we're doing a chart for everybody. We can't get pinpoint specific because there's no pinpoint specific person we're doing chart for. So using the whole house system in that way makes it much easier. Now you can also use the whole house system if you don't know time of birth, because again, the story is always told by the planets and their relationships, right? And the combinations of these planets as they come together. So we like to have a time of birth because it helps us really pinpoint things. But here's the thing though, right? If your astrology is strong enough, you don't need a time of birth, because what that time of birth gives us is very specific timing indicators for areas of life. So time of birth helps in terms of really getting specific about when and where something's going to happen, right? We can't, literally without a time of birth, we definitely can't do that. But in terms of just addressing a person's nature, right, their psych profile, personality profile through the chart, you can absolutely use just the planets. And in those situations, it's perfectly acceptable to use whole house systems. In fact, in Vedic astrology, they use a variation of a whole house system with some other things. So in Vedic astrology, it's complicated. Jesus, it's like calculus compared to basic math. Okay. Yeah. So you know what? Let's take a look at some transits right now. So I'm using the YouTube streamer. So I don't know. It doesn't allow me to share my screen with you. I'm working on trying to figure out how to use these live stream systems. It's not easy. I'm not a tech person, so this is a bit of a struggle for me. But let's look at some aspects right now. So right now, as you and I speak, look at that. The moon is at 23 Capricorn. It is coming close to Pluto at 28 Capricorn. There's only 5 degrees between them, and there's only 30 degrees in a sign. So if you only have a window of 30 degrees, 0 to 30, and now you've got a planet that's 5 degrees away from the next planet, that's pretty close. So with a moon approaching Pluto like that, this is pretty significant, and it creates a more serious, like somber kind of feeling. Now, this moon at 23 Capricorn as we speak is also trining the North Node at 23 Capricorn, and it is making a sextile to Neptune at 23 Capricorn, which means absolutely, and this is why it gets confusing when people just give you data, because that means nothing to listen to it, right? Because even I have to look at it, because I'm like, wait, stop. I don't know. I need to see this. This is just, you can't read this to me. So when we talk about the combinations or the art of astrology, we're talking about combining things. Here's how it works, right? So now we know we've got 2 planets at the degree of the nodes. So they believe that whatever degree the node is, in this particular case today, it's 23 Taurus. When we have a planet at that same degree, regardless of sign, it makes more, it emphasizes the planet more. It makes it more fated. And the reason we say it's more fated is only because the nodes represent external circumstances beyond our control. So the nodes also represent people at large that we may or may not have relationships with. So when you're talking about mass events with people, typically the nodes are involved. The nodes represent masses of people that are not necessarily personally connected to each other. So with the moon and Neptune also on the degree of the node, we've got a moon, Neptune, north node, south node, a moon, Neptune node thing happening, and we read it like that. So with the moon, the node, and Neptune together, one of the things that we can expect, I would think, because Neptune rules the water, would be potentially something to do with the oceans or storms or like swells of water, excess swells of water, tsunamis, embankments overflowing. But Capricorn is an earth sign, Taurus is an earth sign, and Neptune's in Pisces, which is a water sign. So this also, to me, suggests that there's a possibility of mudslides or landslides that could be occurring with this particular combination of aspects. Now, with the moon so close to Pluto as this is happening, what this could also possibly indicate is, again, I still think these are major earth shiftings, right? Landslides, mudslides, things of that nature, physical earth movement in a large volume. Or because it's Pluto and Neptune with the moon in the north node, this could also indicate a major turning point in the next 24 hours that has to do with, humanitarian crisis would be the obvious choice because it's what we're looking at right now. But it could also have everything to do with charity, as well as potentially. See, it's too easy to say that this is all politics and chemical warfare, but I really think this has more to do with hospitalization and illness and sickness. So we may be hearing again, more or new news involving some recent upsets or turnarounds involving viruses in the next 24 hours. So we'll take a look at that. But that's when you're looking at a chart, this is what we're looking at. These planets, what relationship do they have with each other? And now that we've determined that, like, let's put them all together, like, let's put them in the blender and see what happens from there. And that's what it looks like looking at the chart for today, which is pretty ominous. Because also at the same time, Mercury and Pluto are in exact partile, or which means exact sextile with each other. So that should also indicate, and here's some optimistic news for you. That should also indicate that there are potentially some behind the scenes negotiations and discussions that, because these are the last degrees of signs, that will finally bring major matters to a close. Major meaning involving large masses of people, because Pluto always rules the masses. Yeah, so I'm going to hold on to that optimistic thought. Now, the other thing is we know that in one of my last predictions, looking at the chart for Ukraine, the Zelensky administration, for Putin, um, I was hopeful and optimistic that this whole business out there would be done by the full moon. Clearly, it's not. So it was right and wrong all at the same time. I'm not going to say I was completely wrong, because a lot of the stuff panned out just not in the exact direction I expected it to. And the hoping it was over was a big reach for me. But I'm trying to focus on the positive. So the thing about it is, when that full moon came, the upside is that we we did not have nuclear bombs falling around our head across the globe. That's huge. I don't think people really appreciate how close we are to complete world destruction, because there won't be World War III. There will just be world destruction. So the fact that we didn't have nuclear bombs falling around our head around that full moon is huge. Now, also too, if you watch, because my timing is always a little bit off, it is possible that this is all going to come to an end in the next week, or certainly before May ends, because the Russia chart and the Ukraine chart, all these sort of things are getting hit at this time. Now, in situations like this, it is more difficult to predict the outcomes of events, because there are times when we look at a chart, we're looking at the chart specific to, we're looking at a chart specific to individual things, right? So if I'm looking at the transits for right now, everything going on overhead, I'm looking at all of this focused on your chart, right? When we're talking about things that involve large numbers of people, right? More than one person, right? It gets more complicated, because whatever's happening, we should be if it's a specific type of event that we're predicting, we should absolutely be able to see it in everybody's chart that's connected to that event. For example, if someone in your family dies, right, as my father did years ago, we could see his death show up in everybody's chart except mine. Now, I was born at home, so my time of birth is not completely accurate. We know that. So, and this is where time of birth actually does become important, because when we're seeing this, we're seeing my father's death show up in every chart but my own. So clearly, it should be in my chart also. It should be as plain as day, like it is in everybody else's. And one of the things that we realized is that because I was born at home, and the time of birth was probably not 100% accurate, that's why we weren't seeing it. So when we rectified the chart and played around with it, and that's a lot of work, but when we did it, one of the things that we realized is not only that if we shift the time this way by a few minutes, now we can see it. Now it's obvious. And every other predictive type of chart we did, like personal horoscopes for the month ahead, for the year ahead, whatever, now everything ran on time. But prior to that, nothing made sense, because we would have these predicted charts and nothing would happen when they were supposed to happen. Well, it's because the time of birth was wrong. That's when you need a time of birth. You can do a whole lot without it. So when you're dealing with multiple people, any type of specific event should show up in everybody's chart simultaneously, right? And this is typically hard to determine when you're looking at these charts. This is, I mean, we're talking about nations and countries and the entire globe. This is not so easy. So I would have been a genius if I had called this correctly, obviously. But I didn't get it right in terms of everything coming to an official end, and I'm okay with that, and you should be too. So one of the things So hospital births, so here's the thing with hospital birth too, right? And hospital time of births are not always completely accurate either, and it depends on where you're born, what year you were born, and how much staffing the hospital has. In some hospitals, in the labor and delivery rooms, they have somebody whose specific job is to do a couple of things and watch the clock so they can record the lifetime of birth. In better funded hospitals, they have that. In areas where they don't have that kind of staffing, or it was before people thought this was important, like they would guesstimate what the time was. And listen, if you've ever been in a crisis, like the difference between 2 minutes and 20 minutes seems like nothing. So you could be as much as 20 minutes off if you're guessing time. Right, exactly. So for the most part, we go with a hospital recorded live birth time. And if it's not playing out in terms of the predictions that we're seeing, like solar returns and lunar returns, all the predictive type of charts, if the timing's still not right, like this is showing up here, but nothing's happening, one of two things is occurring. Either we're not doing the astrology well, or the time of birth is a little bit off. But without the time of birth, it's difficult to do predictive stuff, except using just transits like I've been using for the countries. And it is impossible for individuals unless you're just using transits. So that's what we got going on right now. So watch the next 24 to, I would even give it 36 hours, 24 to 36 hours for some communication about something coming to a final negotiation, right? Like this is literally the last conversation we need to have about this. We are done now. Conversation's closed. As it pertains to masses of people, not just individuals. So this could potentially be about the Ukraine and Russia and the insanity that continues to go on there, because this is Putin's personal issue, and personal issues are always irrational issues. Or, this could have to do with the virus, which is absolutely something that affects masses of people. Or it could be something completely unexpected that I'm not seeing, which is possible too, because the world and life is a big place. Okay. So now some of the other things that happen right now, and if you've been feeling like, ugh, God, why am I getting out of bed? It's not just you. It's not just you. We're all feeling it. And it seems like we've all been feeling it worse the last week or so. I literally, everything for the last week or so has just felt like one giant grind. And there are apparently, from my understanding with conversations with other people, there are more than a few people, and I'm sure you know more than a few people too around you, that are literally on active suicide watch right now because they're that depressed. And we all know it's a combination of things, right? It's the pandemic, it's the war, it's the economy, it's everything, right? We all know that. But it seems like this last couple of weeks, it's just been like we've reached critical mass. Like we're at the end of the road, Jack. Like I can't do this anymore. And one of the reasons maybe is that transiting Venus is what they call besieged. So Venus as a planet rules the things that make us happy, that bring us pleasure and joy in our life, right? The things that feel good to us. And don't let anybody kid you. Everyone needs pleasure in their life. It's the only thing that gets us out of bed in the morning, short of the house being on fire. So pleasure is what we need for our sanity and our well-being. And to drive this point home, remember this. The definition of mental illness or emotional distress or things that require medication, right? The definition of depression is when you can no longer experience pleasure or joy in the things that should be bringing you pleasure and joy. So pleasure is such an important part of our lives, right? That the lack of pleasure in things is literally the first sign of dysfunction, that something's really wrong. That's how important pleasure is. Venus rules pleasure. Okay. So Venus has been besieged. And what that means is that it's almost like being attacked. It's literally stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because Venus is trapped between what they call two malefics, Mars and Saturn. Mars and Saturn are not awful planets. They do really important stuff. Without them, nothing would get done and nothing would hold up. But they're also, yeah, it really has been exhausting. But Mars and Saturn are like foot soldiers, right? So ugh, if you've ever known GIs or soldiers like out in the field, or and I don't mean to come down on anybody, but these are really some coarse, vulgar individuals, right? Because that's the nature of their job, that's the nature of their environment, that's the nature of what they do. Like being a soldier is not about going out and playing the lute and reciting poetry, and eating bonbons on the couch. That's not what they do. They're coarse and vulgar and abrasive and difficult to be around and scary too, right? Um, if you're not really thick-skinned and able to handle your business, and even then, right? Because that's what they do. So Mars and Saturn are your common soldiers, your GIs, your foot soldiers, right? Your grunt men, right? Venus is, the young lad, right? The sensitive artist, right? The musician, the young girl, right? The soft and sensitive child. Venus represents all the soft things in life that bring us pleasure. Trapped between these two vulgar, crude, coarse, abrasive characters. So Venus is basically besieged, trapped between a rock and a hard place. And that is what we've been experiencing for the last week or so. We're almost out of the woods. So, oh my God, take a deep breath and hang in there. Hang in there, baby. Because Venus is at 19, Saturn is at 21. That's 3 degrees, which means that in the next week, Venus should be on the other side of that Saturn and out from between those two characters, and we can start breathing easier. You'll feel the relief instantly. As a matter of fact, I'll even give you a date. Let's see. Okay. Right. So when Venus is besieged or be trapped in a rock and a hard place, it's very difficult to feel any pleasure in anything. So literally no one is getting a break right now except maybe, I don't know, sociopaths. 21. There we go. So starting the 30th. Ooh, yeah, baby, right there with that eclipse. Oh no, that's April. April has the eclipse. March 30th, right after the quarter moon of 4 Capricorn. Let's see. So by the time we get to the end of the month, the good news is we'll get our sense of humor back. Ooh, sense of humor. Don't leave home without it. And we can all take a deep breath. We'll feel instant relief as soon as Venus gets to the other side and out from between these two characters, which will be closer to the 30th. But between here and the 30th, it's going to be a long walk, right? So just understand that this is what we're dealing with, right? And just kind of, grit, work on your grit and resilience and get through it. Slog through it as best you can. When Venus gets to the other side, when Venus gets to the other side of that Saturn at the same time, Mercury will have entered Aries. And Saturn's going to around 9. Okay, so when we get down closer to the 30th and Venus is on the other side of Saturn and it's out of the sandwich between Mars and Saturn, Mercury will also have finally gotten out of this super sensitive, paranoid, terrified Pisces in these last degrees into Aries, which is going to have us much more optimistic in our thoughts, a lot more brave in what we're thinking and doing and believing, right? Because Aries has a lot to do with beliefs and confidence and optimism. And we're not going to feel like 200% better. We're going to feel like damn sight better than we do now. Now, the thing I want you guys to watch is right now, as we speak today, Mercury is at 28 Pisces. and it will be a couple of days before it gets to zero Aries. So zero Aries is going to be the 27th, which is 2 days from now. Tomorrow. So tomorrow and the next day, right? 36 hours. 36 hours. So one of the things I want you guys to watch, if you have people who are struggling with mental health issues right now, please, by all means, like stay close to them. Stay in contact, stay close to them, because these last degrees of Pisces, and especially pulling in Pluto in the last degrees of Capricorn, because the two are the most depressive combination, depending on what else is going on in the chart. So there is a very high possibility for successful suicide attempts over the next 36 hours. So if you have people around you that are struggling with mental health issues, stay as close to them as possible, because they're really going through the ringer right now. It's not them being dramatic, and it's not them trying to cop out of life. Like, they're really feeling it. And these next 36 hours are going to be like just the fuel, the accelerant on the fire. So keep that in mind, and do your best to pull them through, because literally we just need to get to the 28th and the 30th, when Mercury enters zero Aries and Venus pulls out from this god awful, excuse my language, shit sandwich with Venus and Saturn, and we all start to brighten up a little bit and start to get some air. So yeah, I hope so too. I actually have a friend who's really, I actually have a couple friends who are really struggling with their mental health, and the one who's always been a bit of, well, I hate to say it, a drama queen. Um, so the problem is, if you're prone to dramatics prior to now, it's very difficult for people to take you seriously, right? Because everybody's so deep in their own dysfunction, we're not seeing anything except our own misery. The misery index is high right now. But looking at it now that I'm looking at these aspects again, I'm also realizing, like, he really is probably, most likely, very serious about how deep he's feeling, or he's sinking in terms of his mental health. So I'm going to give him a call later, check on him, and the other one too. So even if people are prone to dramatics prior to now, these next 36 hours are absolutely critical, and this may not be dramatics. This may be the real deal in terms of how bad they're feeling. But again, once we get through it, we're on the other side. We're on the upside. So there you go. Hi, Brijesh. How neat. I like fancy names. Fancy. All right, so we have Noreen and Brijesh, and it looks like there's a third person in here, maybe. So hi, whoever you are. Okay, so Noreen, does this make a little bit more sense in terms of how these transits are read? Good. I hope this helps. Yeah, so one of the challenges when you're doing global horoscopes, which is basically a general horoscope for everybody on the planet, is you're doing a general horoscope for everybody on the planet. So it's very hard to pinpoint things specifically to these dates, because you're not looking at like one person, that has something going on. So the challenge it becomes like, do we do like this really big general sort of thing, or like, how do we do this? And there are some amazing astrologers. Susan Day. Oh God, I can't remember her name. Susan Miller is a phenomenal astrologer when it comes to big general horoscopes. And she's really blown up big in the last few years, but she's been around forever. And apparently her mother was an astrologer too, which helped, I'm sure. She still remains the queen of how astrology should be done, or it can be done successfully. And I still haven't quite figured out her techniques for getting some of the stuff she's gotten, because she's pulled some things. If you're a Pisces, you can expect this, and some type of bonus, promotion, reward, whatever. Money will land in your lap on Tuesday at 2:00. Not that specific, but close. And it's happened. And I'm like, how does she do this? Like, there are billions of Pisceans all over the globe. Like, we can't all be having the same experience right now. but maybe we can. I don't know. So I haven't quite figured out what her techniques are to accomplish that. But she still remains the gold star standard for general predictive work. So love her to death. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Anything? Bueller? So we're at 54 minutes. I'm just going to go for a few more minutes, and then we're going to end the live stream. So if you guys have any questions, this is a great time to throw it out there. Okay, so we're at 56 minutes. So I'm going to end this here. Thank you guys for coming in. And thank you, Noreen, for coming in and hanging out with me. And that is it. So the live stream will be available for replay on the thing for a little while. I'm going to be going to work on the April horoscopes. And again, watch the next 36 hours for important developments. You're welcome. So if you have people around you that are struggling with mental health issues, this is probably not the time they're being dramatic, but actually being serious. So stay close to them. Otherwise, I would look for big news and announcements involving one of a possible couple things. So it could be, oh, I guess I'm staying for a minute. Olutade. How come I'm not seeing the effect of Neptune and Pisces? Okay. So before I try to answer that question, you got to give me a little bit more information. So when you say the effect of Neptune and Pisces, what does that mean? Because a lot of astrologers have a lot of different perspectives on things that are not necessarily mine. No, I'm not using Vedic astrology. I'm using Western astrology. I am a beginner, like a super, super beginner with Vedic astrology. So I'm not even trying to do that. Olutare, I still don't understand. So you're saying I mean globally, but I don't know what effect this is. So while you're retyping a response, so I can answer your question better, let me just go over some general stuff about Neptune and Pisces. Maybe this will help. So typically with astrologers, just so you guys know, with a lot of astrologers or people who call themselves astrologers, they hear Neptune and it's instantly, oh my God, lies, deception, drug addiction, you name it. And it's, what kind of shady, whatever, and it's there. And in their mind, because Neptune is in Pisces, it's rulership. Now it's even worse. So Neptune and Pisces in rulership is actually a good thing because when a planet is in its rulership, it has the opportunity to, one, be itself, but also, two, when you're able to be yourself, it also means that you're able to express the best parts of yourself. Think about it. When are you able to be your best self? Well, when you're comfortable. And when are you comfortable? When you're in your home where people know you and where you belong and people understand you, right? Or even where you're the king or queen. So planets in rulership have the opportunity to be their best expressions of themselves. So it's a very positive, powerful position for a planet to be in its home sign. So with Neptune and Pisces, all this, deception and drugs and addiction and all this, all the bad stuff that typically goes with Neptune doesn't necessarily apply now. Neptune in Pisces has a lot to do with compassion and humanitarianism and higher spiritual practices and priorities, not lip service, but actually practicing what you preach and not asking for a pat on the back for it. And Neptune in Pisces also has to do with film, theater, the arts, music, creativity, spiritual work, psychics, mediums, and the veil between worlds being very thin. And also the ocean and water and the feet. Neptune in Pisces covers a lot of territory. So Neptune in Pisces in rulership can actually be a very powerful, positive thing. Now, when we look at Neptune and Pisces in your personal chart, we got to look at where in your personal chart it's hitting. Or if you don't have a time of birth, what, and this is even more important, even if you do have a time of birth, what planets is transiting Neptune and Pisces making a relationship to, right? So Olutade wants to know why he's not seeing the effect of Neptune and Pisces, but we don't know what relationship transiting Neptune and Pisces right now has to his personal chart. We don't know what planets it's having a relationship with, if it's even having a relationship with any of his planets, or what houses it might be sitting in if it's not having an active relationship with planets. So that is unfortunately that's a very difficult question to answer without more information, which we don't really have right now. So if you're not feeling the effects of Neptune and Pisces, it may be because there's no effect to have. And if you can give me the specific planet that Neptune is aspecting your chart, we can certainly talk about how that's playing out. But without that kind of very specific information, there's no way to answer this because Neptune covers such a broad area and territory. Now, I can tell you that Jupiter and Neptune, they're 3 degrees apart, but they're still there, right? So Jupiter and Neptune are moving together like this. Jupiter and Neptune together in Pisces, conjunct, which we're under right now and will be under for a few more weeks, represents miracles and unbelievable luck, among other things. It also represents tsunamis and, overflowing riverbanks. But the highest possible expression is miracles in the 11th hour. So if you know someone, if you can unselfishly ask for miracles for other people, this is the time to do it because those prayers will be heard. So selfish miracles for yourself, I don't know, but unselfish acts of charity are certainly well received and rewarded at this time. Okay, all right, now we've officially been at an hour. So I'm going to go, you guys. If you're around, again, look for my live streams and we'll have a chat, bring your questions. And it's been good. And I'll talk to you guys later.